I want to acknowledge not only Pete but also Blanche and Nicole, who have helped fairly considerably with some of this stuff. Just very quickly, threats. I think this is dealt with lots of, these are all fairly obvious. A number of commercial types of fishing. We have some shark control programs that are certainly known to take sawfish, recreational line fishing, and then the usual sort of grab bag of other minor threats, habitat modification, pollution and climate change, etc. So dwarf sawfish, I don't have anywhere near as pretty a maps as some people. As Pete mentioned, probably a Australian endemic, and we certainly know occurring in the area from this sort of northwest part of Australia around to at least Cape York, on the tip of northern tip of Australia. Its occurrence on the upper east coast here is somewhat debated, and we need to sort out exactly whether it was ever here or not. But through the rest of this area, it does occur. It has low to moderate genetic diversity in this area. There is stock structuring, so Western Australia, Northern Territory, Gulf of Carpentaria are different stocks genetically. Level of decline is uncertain. We may have fairly good data on some things, but we have very poor historic data about what's happened with populations. And that'll be the same for all of the sawfish species that we're talking about. It is, though, currently protected under our national endangered species legislation and is protected in all state waters as well in its distribution. So it's a no-take species basically throughout this area. Not to say that it's not caught, but it's illegal to keep them. And we put a little star in here in terms of within Australian waters where it's probably one of the most significant areas. This area here, the Kimberley region in northern Western Australia, is probably one of the best spots to still find them. Very macrotidal sort of area. Habitat disturbance almost doesn't exist, and very, very small amounts of fishing. Basically no people. So freshwater sawfish, Microdon, Pristis, whatever you want to call it. Freshwater to marine, the juveniles in particular in rivers, and we've had some really good work over the last few years that has started to really give us a good understanding of how they're using these sorts of areas. Lots of stock structuring when you look at the genetics, potentially down even to the river level, and particularly in major drainages. Again, level of decline is uncertain. Also protected in all state and federal waters. And in terms of significant areas, and I mentioned this after I think it was Patricia's talk, but some of the major river systems, the Fitzroy in Western Australia, the Daly in the Northern Territory, and a number of the rivers along the eastern part of the Gulf of Carpentaria are probably areas of fairly important significance. Green sawfish, this is a little more interesting, certainly the widest distribution in terms of Australian waters and probably in terms of how far it goes south away from the equator. Historically we knew it was occurred down to around about Sydney and a fair way down the west coast as well. More recently though, the yellow arrows here will describe about where we really see them now. So restricted more to the northern parts of its range. It's been declared officially extinct in New South Wales, so this lower part of its range on the east coast, and there hasn't been a record in about 30 odd years. So more of an estuarine marine species, as Pete alluded to. We see them out to 70 metres at least, and particularly the big ones are caught occasionally in fish trawl fisheries. Again, stock structuring mostly at the fairly broad spatial scale, uncertain level of decline. Obviously, unlike the other species, a very substantial range contraction within Australian waters, and it is protected in all state and federal waters. Have I got a yellow card yet?
You just about to get the yellow card.
Okay, the yellow card, that's good. We're just about there. Narrow sawfish. This one it appears to have a more mobile sort of disposition. And biologically is very productive compared to the other species, the Pristis species. Still occurs in all areas of its normal range within Australia, probably because of this high level of productivity. We do see it very regularly in commercial fisheries, still in particular commercial gillnet fisheries, where it does make up a significant portion of catches in some areas. Obviously, it is no take in some species, but it's not actually covered by federal endangered species legislation, so only protected in Queensland and Western Australian waters. And Sonia, I think, will probably mention this a little bit in her talk as well. Very low genetic diversity, interestingly, compared to the other sawfishes. While it's the most common one, it's the one with the lowest genetic diversity. There's almost no mitochondrial haplotype diversity within Australian waters at all. But there is a little bit, and it certainly indicates that there is some structuring Western Australia, Gulf of Carpentaria and the east coast of Queensland. And I think that is most of it, so I'll put up our summary. This is one that Pete and I developed very early on in the process, and we think it probably summarises quite neatly what Pete and I managed to say in 15 odd minutes in one slide.
Thank you.